2, 1. Let's go. Welcome to the Fiction Addiction Podcast, a podcast where we go one-on-one with fiction creators, such as authors, filmmakers, actors, songwriters, and more. Each episode, we get the inside scoop on our guests' creative process, the ups and downs of their industries, and our guests also give out tips and tricks that help them become successful. And now, let's jump into the episode with your host, Chris C.L. Lowry.
All right. Welcome back to the Fiction Addiction Podcast. My next guest has been creating art and telling stories since she was old enough to hold a pen. Her art has been featured on convention badges and book covers and at various art shows throughout the Southeast. Despite writing and illustrating her first science fiction story at the age of 8 and being published in her high school literary magazine, she has been unwilling to call herself a writer until recently, when she published her first novel, The Laws of Entanglement. She currently works as the social media and marketing person for Mocha Memoirs Press, a local micro press whose mission is to amplify marginalized voices in speculative fiction. When she's not creating art or writing, she can be found gaming or working on her next cosplay. Ladies and gentlemen, Maya Preisler, what is going on?
Hi. Excuse me, frog in my throat there. Hi.
What's going on, Maya? What's going on? So let's jump into your writing journey.
All right.
Since you seem like you've done it since a very young age. So what got you started in writing?
I guess I was just around it all of the time. Both my grandfathers were writers. One of them actually had a book published. The other one was a poet who was always scribbling little poems in the margins of the newspaper. So it was normal.
Oh, wow.
So my birth mother, one of the positive things I can say about her is that she was one of those people who was always coming up with weird stories to explain things.
So at age 8, you began writing and illustrating your first science fiction story. What came first for you in terms of being young and being attracted to this more, the writing or the illustrating?
That's a hard question to answer. I guess maybe the story came first, but then as I was telling myself the story, these images would sort of unfold in my head, and it became this constant struggle to find a way to express both the words and the visuals, because I'm not necessarily a very verbal thinker. I think in visuals, and so trying to find a way to distill that into a communicative fashion.
So what was the influence behind the illustration? Was it just solely your writing, or were there family members who were interested in art as well?
I had family members who were interested in art as well. They were all musicians as well. Like everybody in my family, for some bizarre reason, all played the saxophone.
Oh, wow, really?
Yeah. Jazz saxophone specifically. And so I think I wanted to find a way to be as creative as they were.
Mm.
And so to receive that recognition that they had. So I put that into the drawings, and it was influenced, of course, by pop culture, like we all are.
Yeah, definitely.
Star Trek had a lot to do with it.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So did you ever gravitate towards music because your family members were so into it?
I did, but I always wanted to do the really cool, weird things. Like I wanted to play the violin or be a drummer. And they really wanted me to be like marching band saxophone because, there was 5 saxophones laying around the house. They wouldn't have to pay for a new instrument or lessons. And I just, I didn't want to follow the trend. I had to be different. That didn't work out well. I'm terrible at keeping time.
So you're 8 years old. How did the science fiction story come about?
I had a teacher who was trying to encourage us all to read. And so she wanted us to write stories. And the only way that I was interested in writing a story was for it to be a story that I wanted to read. And so everybody else was writing stories about, the normal things that 8-year-olds write about: riding bikes, getting a dog, having a party. And I was like, no, I need there to be people with psychic powers and extraterrestrial planets. And luckily, my teacher was very supportive and let me do that.
Wow. So then you go into high school and then you get published in the school's magazine. How was that?
I had really supportive English teachers who were constantly giving me good grades and good feedback on my writing. And one of them happened to be the faculty person in charge of the literary magazine and encouraged me to submit some of my stuff. And it was all, voted on by members of the student body.
So how was that feeling, knowing when you got picked and selected?
It was weird because I didn't think I was good enough. So to have a bunch of people that I didn't think particularly liked me, like my writing, I was like, well, I guess I can't be that bad.
Right. Now, when you were, what was it, consistency in writing from age 8 into high school, or was it on and off?
It was fairly consistent in terms of poetry or story ideas. Like I have notebooks after notebooks, and I had probably an entire drawer in my filing cabinet full of scribbles where I was constantly coming up with something, but I was never really doing anything with it or showing it to anyone.
Mm. And why was that?
I guess I just didn't think I was good enough. And in addition, I think to having all these creative people in my family, despite the fact that I came from a family of like musicians and writers, they all had really normal day jobs, like engineer, designer, grocery store clerk. The poetry happened at night kind of thing. So there was a push for me to do something, practical.
So when did the confidence come?
Much later, like in adulthood, I started making friends with a bunch of other writers and reading their stuff and knowing them as people and being like, really? It's so you just write it and then you put it out there and that's all you have to do? There's not some elaborate vetting process where they check to see if you're worthy or good enough?
So once you get into this world, this writing world, you see it's something that's attainable as a career path, as many have made it. What was your goal when it came to writing? Was it something you, as a young woman growing up, knew you wanted to do for a living, or was it, like you said, was it something you knew you wanted to do on the side at night, in addition to a normal 9 to 5?
It was always something I knew that I wanted to do, but I didn't really have the concept that people could do it as a job. I thought it had to be a side gig. Really, I don't even necessarily think of it as a job now so much as like something that I have to do to keep myself sane.
So why is it that you don't think of it as a job? Is it because of the passion you have for it?
I think so. Like in my head, I have this idea that work is something that you have to do, even though you don't necessarily want to, but so that anything that I'm actually enjoying and having fun doing, if I'm having fun and then I get paid, that's not really work. That's play that people are paying me to do.
Exactly. So what you won a bunch of awards. You have a lot of accomplishments when it comes to writing. You were an official Outlanticon artist 2015, 2016, 2017. Second place Con Carolina's Badge Artist Contest in 2017. You were illustrator of a book series for children in foster kinship and adoptive care, among many other things. So, how did it feel obtaining those accomplishments and getting those accolades? And which one would you say is the most rewarding to you?
I think it always feels a little surreal because I'm in my head, I'm still the little kid trying to keep up with the rest of the people in the family. Um, but I think the one that meant the most to me is honestly being asked to illustrate the book series for kids.
Mm. How'd that come along?
Well, so my adoptive mother has worked in the foster care and adoption industry for, I guess, a large portion of her career. And she had a work friend who wanted to write a series of children's books, sort of helping children navigate this challenging emotional place of being in care. And she said, I need someone to illustrate this and I need to get this published, but I have no idea where to start. And my mom, in her infinite wisdom, said, I think you should talk to Maya. Um, it was really scary at the time because I didn't know anything about book publishing or what we were going to do or how we were going to do it. But I really wanted to be a part of that because it's an area that's pretty close to my heart.
Mm. Now, once you got the opportunity, was there? Because many times, once we dive into something, especially something that's close to us, especially something that has meaning to our lives and can impact people, was there pressure on you to make sure that it was perfect for the children?
There was so much pressure on my part. And ironically, I think the universe kind of worked it out for me because right at about the time that the deadlines for the project started being due, I went through a really horrible breakup. And so I had this choice of I can fall into depression and watch stupid chick flicks and eat ice cream all day, or I can get up and adult and illustrate this book. And getting up and illustrating the book helped me work through my own stuff, but it also gave
Right.
me the drive to push through in a place where, yeah, I probably would have not been able to do it, I think, had I not been gifted with that circumstance.
So, what motivated you to keep going at that point in time and with as much as you were dealing with? Because obviously, breakups aren't easy, and everyone copes in different ways. Everyone deals with stress and different situations in different ways. So, what do you believe kept you motivated for this project?
I'm a hyper competitive person sometimes. In my in my youth, one of my favorite songs was that old throwback from the 50s, like anything you can do, I can do better. And
Mm.
I was in this headspace of being mad at him because he's, successful and published. And I was like, all right, you know what? I can be successful too. And I'm going to prove to you that I can be just as successful as you are. So, it might have been my desire for revenge because success is the best revenge.
Oh, so he was also a writer.
Yes.
Wow. Have you guys since, or like, are you not on speaking terms, or have you since like mended the breakup and now?
I can, be polite and be nice, but he's not really someone that I'm interested in being friends with because I've grown a lot since then.
Right. So, what do you find more difficult for you, being a writer or being an illustrator?
I think probably being an illustrator. That the images in my head move so quickly and are so hard to put, I guess, into reality that
Mm.
it's almost easier to capture the word in a sense. You know, colors are not always the same, from people to people. You'll often have a conversation with someone, we'll have an argument over is this purple or is this blue? Um,
Right.
or so even when I manage to take that image that's in my head and put it on paper, it isn't always necessarily seen the way that I want it to be seen. And somehow words are a little bit easier because there's a dictionary and I can point to it and say, no, this word actually means this versus color, which is a little bit more subjective.
Mm. So when you illustrated this project, the deadlines were they how did you guys work out setting the deadlines? Was it something where the writer set them and you made sure you adhered to those deadlines, or was there a conversation between both of you and you both came up with dates that worked for you both, and you went from there?
Um, they were set a little bit by the writer, but also sort of by external forces. She herself is a teacher and a speaker, helping guide other foster parents and social workers and people through the process. And so she had an event coming up and she decided that she wanted to have books on hand for the event. And so that sort of set the deadline for us.
Did you attend the event with her?
I did not.
Oh,
That probably would have
have,
been a good idea, but it might have involved speaking to people.
oh, introvert.
Yeah.
It was funny because I had a discussion with another author about that, and um, why do you think so many writers are introverts?
I think it offers us a way to connect with other people and form meaningful relationships where we don't necessarily have to be present to do it.
Mm.
Like, and it's also almost a way of avoiding rejection in a sense too. Like we can put the ideas out there and the people who are our people who think like us or need to hear what we have to say, they're going to gravitate towards us and we're going to bond over it. And then the people who uh, don't like what we have to say, well, they don't have to read our book, and that's okay.
And compared to years ago, where writers could be behind the scenes and just put out good books, and people would support them, and without even having to see them or necessarily wanting to see them, just worried focused on the content of the work. How do you, obviously with that personality, deal with the, I would say, demand of readers and social media wanting to have more contact with writers, because that's just the way entertainment is. You know what I mean? They want to know their writer, just their favorite authors, and they want to have discussions in inboxes and DMs. So how are you preparing for that, entering that type of world with social media?
Whew, that's kind of a scary question. Um, I mean, on the one hand, I guess I'm kind of prepared for it because I've been attending conventions and as an art guest and doing cosplay for so long that I'm used to being social and social interactions in that space. So I think writing under the shield of speculative fiction and being a huge geek, I can be like, yeah, come out to the convention, meet me, let's talk, let's talk comic books, superheroes. That's if I can frame it in that, like, this is my tribe, these are my people. It's not as threatening. I think if I was trying to be like New York Times best-selling author, talking to your average person, that would be a lot more terrifying.
And why do you think it's so different for you? Because obviously the writers, you know what I mean? I mean, not the writers, the readers would fall into your tribe. Obviously you'll have some people who aren't, you know what I mean, who may just love your story, that they haven't read that type of genre, but your story grabbed them, and or you as a person grabbed them, or um, so they may be out the tribe but still enjoy your work, and obviously you guys converse
No,
in
right.
whatever manner that is. But why do you think it's so different from being a writer and then cosplay in terms of the interaction?
Huh. That's a good question. I think maybe it's the headspace that I approach cosplay as an actress, that it's a
Mm,
role that I'm stepping into and stepping out of, and a hat that I can put on and take off. And writing is a little bit more vulnerable. It's inviting people inside my head.
mm. So how did you get into cosplay?
Oh, peer pressure. um, Peer pressure, and also just a love of fandom. I saw other people doing it, and I wanted to be one of the cool kids and do it too. And I had always really loved dress up in costumes as a kid, but it was a little bit less acceptable then. So there was a certain amount of, hey, wait, I can do this thing that I've really always loved, and it's cool now. I'm gonna do it.
And I don't know how to. I'm trying to think about what, because so many things we look at in society now are not necessarily a change, but just more attention on it now. You know what I mean? So
Mhm.
I say that to say this. Um, Cosplay is very big now, to the point where I follow people on social media that not only do they do the events, but they do their own personal photo shoots as characters. You know what I mean? So,
Yeah.
and it is so big. It is so, their pictures go viral, their videos go viral. Why do you think it's so much something, like you said, it wasn't that accepted back then? Why is it such a big thing now?
You know, I think from like a complex socio-economic perspective, the generations before us were coming out of the war
Mm-hmm.
and this environment where they were really all told to like conform, right? But then if you look at the media starting in like the late 70s, early 80s, the messages that we were all fed and raised on, Care Bears, She-Ra, Thundercats, Transformers,
Mm-hmm.
it's all be yourself, be you, no matter how weird you are. And when you put your weird together with all of your friends' weird, you guys have superpowers.
Right.
And I think like as a generation, this kind of hit home with all of us. And there's a certain, I guess, level of friendship that develops when as grown adults you can play make believe together.
Yeah,
I,
absolutely.
I think it makes a safe space. And I think our world is full of a lot of really awful, scary stuff. And so coming together with people of incredibly different backgrounds and bonding over this shared make believe has the power to be pretty transformative and healing in a lot of ways.
Hmm. So, what was your favorite character to do cosplay for?
Uh, it's funny. I always thought it was going to be Wonder Woman. And I do love cosplaying Wonder Woman, but it was cosplaying as a Ghostbuster that hit home.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I was such like a little nerdy kid interested in science, and I'm still kind of obsessed with parapsychology. And so putting on that suit, I felt like I was going to go protect people. I was going to go bust some ghosts. And that just, I felt like a badass.
Now, what goes behind it? Because some people make it look so easy. They make it look like it's, you know what I mean. They do it so much that you look at them. Oh, that could be. But some people, it really spend time and they kill it. Like, you know what I mean? They look like they could play in those movies or those films or those cartoons. They look fresh out. And most of the time they're like custom. Like the costumes are custom. They're not something you could just buy off Amazon and people. So what could explain to people the process of what goes into cosplay, and obviously the competitive nature. I would assume that's behind it as well.
Right. So it depends on your goal and sort of the level that you're at and where you want to go with it. I'm a big fan of casual cosplay because I like to be comfortable. So I love to go to the thrift store and put together outfits that look like, my first Wonder Woman cosplay was Wonder Woman Goes to the Office. Take these characters and put them in like everyday situations because they're not, don't be awesome all the time. And so it's fun to play with it like that. But then there's also the level of, attention to detail of a character that already existed. And then there are people who come up with their own unique creations and stories. And it's really, where do you want to take it? It can be as simple as you can buy a costume off of Amazon and wear it to the convention, or you can come up with his full character and story and play and act it out and perform in the masquerade. And that's really amazing too. And so it depends upon the person. I have friends that are casual cosplayers like me who love to modify pre-existing garments. And then I have friends who do crazy things like go to Joann's and buy several yards of fabric and spend 20 hours creating unseelie fairy costumes for MarsCon because why not? So there's a lot of craziness that goes into it. There's a lot of packing too. Like I think, I have gone to Dragon Con in a 50-footer. And a van behind us because we had to fit the people somewhere too, right?
Wow.
Motorized vehicles. And some people do really, really cool things that I love of incorporating their physical challenges into their cosplay. Like one of my favorite ever is a lady at Dragon Con who decks out her entire wheelchair as a dragon. So she's not riding around in a wheelchair; she's riding a dragon.
Oh wow, that's cool.
Yeah, she's got an epic outfit that goes with it too, and you're just like, can I be you when I grow up?
So, what words of encouragement would you give somebody who is interested in like cosplay and attending these events? Obviously, like you said, you meet so many unique people, so many people that are similar to you, and you make friends. So people who are on like the brink of, like, I don't know what to expect. I don't know if I should go in costume or if it's like, people who are interested in it, what words of encouragement would you give them?
Be you. Like, just be you. Whatever it is you are interested in, there's somebody else who is just as interested as you are. And the minute you put your passion on display and say, hey, I'm wildly obsessed with this obscure thing, you're going to meet your next best friend. So just feel brave in being you and express that honestly.
So when it comes to your writing, why were you so unwilling to call yourself a writer until this moment?
I thought it was something you had to get paid to do, or you had to have a degree in it, or some sort of approval from society of like, yes, you are a writer, some sort of piece of paper or some sort of vetting process. And then I guess I realized being a writer isn't about being an author or being published. It's about writing.
Right. Absolutely. So obviously now you are an author. So
yeah, that helps.
That happened.
It
um,
did.
what was the family's reaction when they obviously knew you were a writer growing up? Um, what was their reaction when they found out you were actually publishing something, a piece of work?
Um, it's been interesting. So, like, the members of my biological family that I'm in touch with, like my brothers, they're very much like, yeah, this is awesome. We knew you had it in you. Which was, it was a little weird. Like, you guys always knew and I didn't. Of course you did. You're my brothers. Brothers know uh, and my adoptive family too were really super supportive and like, we knew you could do it and we're really proud of you. So I think everybody was just really supportive and excited for me and wanting to read it, which I guess too I should have expected but didn't. This idea that suddenly everybody in my family would be like, "Oh, we want to read your book," and I'm like,
Right.
no pressure.
Right. No pressure. So the genre you wrote in,
Mhm.
is that do you see yourself, is that a genre? Because most people like to stick in genres. Are you that type of writer, or are you someone who would is open to exploring different genres based on how you feel in your creativity?
I think I'm gonna be an explorer. Like, my book is sort of shelved in the paranormal romance genre because it is a love story and one of the
Mm-hmm.
main characters is a ghost. So it fits there, but it's also magical realism and it's also a self-help novel and it's also a little bit of a science textbook. So it's a little all over the place. And I think my writing probably will continue to be because I think good things can't be limited
Mm.
and and shouldn't necessarily be limited.
Oh, absolutely.
Like, if Da Vinci had limited himself, that would have been
Right. Right.
a terrible.
So, Mocha Memoirs Press.
Yes.
Tell me about them.
Mocha Memoirs Press is run by my amazing friend Nicole, who is totally brilliant and supportive, and I would not be a published author without her. 'Cause literally
Mm.
throughout the year-long editing process, she kept being like, "So how's the book coming? How's the book coming? You ready to submit yet?" um, but she, recognized the need in speculative fiction for representation and diversity because as a Black woman who loves horror and speculative fiction, there wasn't a lot of good things for her to read.
Mm.
Nor were there a lot of books that she wanted to see published. And so, she was like, all right, well, we're going to fix this. We can do this. And so, as a result, some amazing things have come out of that. Like, we have an anthology that I absolutely love. It's the Black Magic Women anthology, Terrifying Tales by Scary Sisters. And I'm not a horror person. I would have told you that I don't like horror because it's scary, but I love this book. Every person who gets killed in it absolutely deserves it. And the whole way through, I'm like, yeah, girl, kill him, kill him.
Kill him.
Yeah. Yeah. And so that's been a great journey for me because Nicole consistently writes things both as a writer and then publishes things as a publisher that I'm like, like, I did not think I was into Westerns. I didn't think I was into pulp detectives. And I discovered that when you take the white dude out of it and replace it with somebody else, it's a much more interesting story.
Mm. That's
So,
interesting.
like, we've been a little oversaturated. Like, we've had enough John Wayne.
Right.
There were some other cowboys. Let's talk about them.
Right. So why do you think that's important in this industry as not only for the writers but for the readers as well to have those stories from like you said, you changing the perspective. You're putting a different character, different, absolutely opposite of what the norm is. And why do you think that's important?
I think we all need to see ourselves in fiction. We all need to feel like the myths apply to us and that there's something that we can learn. And it was really transformative for me as a survivor of trauma to discover Mercedes Lackey's books because she consistently has characters who've experienced trauma. But unlike your standard treatment where the foster kid is troubled and goes to jail and then becomes a drug addict
Mm-hmm.
because that's what foster kids do. In her stories, the foster kid becomes the hero of the kingdom and saves the day.
Mm.
And I was like, hey, wait, what? I can be a hero.
Right.
And so I feel like we all need to see ourselves and know that we can be better, do better, feel like we belong, we fit in. And as
Right.
healing as that's been for me, I feel like we should all have it. And I just like the stories better.
Right. Now, do you feel obligation as a writer to convey those same positive messages that had such an impact on your life to now give some another reader that same impact through your story?
I do. I absolutely do. I feel like stories can save a life. And if my story can help somebody feel seen and loved, what better reason could I have for writing?
Mm. Now, break down for the listeners that don't know, break down speculative fiction for them.
Okay, so speculative fiction is anything that answers the question of what if. Like, what if aliens landed tomorrow? What if we colonized another planet? What if vampires were real? Um, Science fiction, fantasy, anything that steps sort of outside of the bounds of your standard sitcom, where you have to have a little bit of a suspension of disbelief or engage your imagination.
So now Mocha Memoirs Press, your guys' mission is to, like you said, it is to amplify those voices in that genre. Um, how has it been for you guys in terms of the support from the readers and writers who prefer this genre, and what's the plan moving forward once you get those voices heard?
Um, I think in a lot of ways it's been positive and bolstering to the ego. I don't know if it's ego bolstering, but like a confirmation that we're on the right path to see how well received, like for example, the Black Magic Women anthology was. That is across the top our bestseller. And yet Black women in the horror genre are so underrepresented that it's nice to do something like that and then people recognize it and fall in love with it and be like, yes, this is amazing.
Mm.
So it has been good, and I think it has brought people together. It's brought us better writers and better stories, and even the people who are fans of the press. I feel like we, in our fan groups and things, tend to have relationships with each other and form friendships because we have sort of this common purpose behind us and this understanding that we're all here for the same thing. So we are building a community. Our plan this year is to reach out beyond the internet and sort of get more in touch with bookstores, mom and pop stores, individuals, and reach out to them because a lot of the publishing industry and a lot of business today is conducted in sort of this isolation of the internet, and it's a little cold sometimes. And
Right.
so as part of the marginalized voices, we want to support marginalized bookstores,
Right.
reach people who aren't being reached through the normal channels, because everyone deserves to have a good book, whether or not they have an Amazon
Yeah.
account.
Oh, hell yeah. So when you joined Mocha Memoirs Press, you handle the social media marketing for them.
I do.
How is that from an aspect of handling that as for a publisher, and as well as knowing how important it is as a for your writing career?
It's definitely given me a lot of background information for my career as a writer, because I've had to do a lot of research and come up with sort of best procedures and advice for incoming authors and help them learn how to promote their books and develop promotional strategies for us. So it's forced me to learn some things that I probably would not have been comfortable learning on my own. Because promoting myself feels kind of like I'm being egotistical, but doing it for work is well, it's my job, right?
So for a writer coming up now
Mm-hmm.
who doesn't know a thing about marketing, what advice would you give them in terms of marketing themselves as an author in their books?
I would say, I think probably maybe two main pieces of advice. Number one would be you need a website. And I know that involves money, but you can get a free website through WordPress or Wix or Blogspot. Like it doesn't, everybody loves .coms because they're so sexy in our modern world, but really you just need people to have the ability to do an internet search of your name and author and find your page. Because as a reader, it's really frustrating when I find a good book and I want to read more by the author, and then I try to Google search them and I am unable to find
Mm.
them. And then point two would be just be yourself and make friends. I think I am, like I said, friends with other published authors, and one of whom is wildly successful. And I actually read her books and was a fan of hers before becoming friends with her. Is really successful about that. She's a huge Supernatural fan, and she goes into fan groups and just posts goofy little memes and things about that. But then all of the Supernatural fans sort of follow her back to her author page, which works because her books are in that like sort of monster hunter demon fighter genre. And
Mm.
so, if you just go out into the world, make friends with people and be you, the people who will like your books will sort of automatically follow you home. And then you can be promoting yourself without being salesy or schmarmy, because nobody wants that.
And I don't think, and I don't know what it is about some authors that do that. They're all sales pitchy with their stuff, and um, sometimes borderline annoying.
Right?
You know what I mean? Like with the repetitive behavior. I just don't understand what it is, but it may just be a lack of knowledge of knowing who their audience is, knowing how to target their audience, and what what's effective and what's not. You know what I mean?
I think so. And probably also, like you said earlier, it used to be that the authors could be really hidden and behind the scenes. And I think with a change in technology and a generational change and what new readers want, you sort of have to keep up with that or risk looking pushy.
Yeah, absolutely. So, what do you think about traditional publishing in 2020? How much has self publishing affected that world?
I, I think it has, there are a lot more books available. And so as authors, we kind of have to work maybe a little bit harder to make our stuff stand out, be a little bit more personable, work on connecting with our tribe. But it's also a quantity versus quality question. There are some people out there, and I know several self-published authors that I've met through Twitter and on the convention circuit who, they paid to have their work edited and they went through just as much work as if they had done the traditional route, and their books are just as good. And then there are the people who wrote their book on the iPages app on their iPhone and published it through there because you can.
Mm-hmm.
And, so you have to, there's kind of a burden now on the writer to say, yes, my work was professionally edited. Yes, I put effort into this.
Right.
To sort of stand out from the crowd. But, the traditional publishing market is also seriously oversaturated and has a lot of gatekeeping. So self-publishing is a viable option for a lot of people, especially those who are telling stories that traditional publishing isn't willing.
So break down your publishing journey for me. Once you had your manuscript completed, what was the process like for you, including like the ups and downs of everything that you had to go through to get your book prepared for the publish date for February?
My publishing process was really, I think, non-traditional and unusual compared to what a lot of people experience. I had
Really?
Yeah, well, I had written this book telling myself that no one ever had to read it. Like I conned myself into thinking that it was never going to leave my phone. And so then I was at a convention and on some panels with my friend and boss, and Nicole said a couple of things, and I felt like she was calling me out. She didn't know that she was calling me out, but I told her, I feel like you're calling me out. She said, "Oh yeah." Really? Really? Why is that? And I said, well, I have this paranormal romance that I've got languishing on my phone that is in editing right now. And she said, oh, good. We need some of those for the press. You're going to submit it to me, right? So I had an offer for it sort of before it was finished, and also a publisher peer pressuring me into finishing it. Both of which I probably needed because I'm stubborn. But it wasn't an agonizing process of a lot of editing. So like I wrote it on my phone, so it was rough and sloppy. And then when I put it on my computer, I went back and looked at it and was like, did you write this in the third grade? Or, oh my God, this is a hot mess. So I probably edited it myself 7 times before I passed the manuscript off to my sister. And then she edited it. And then I sent it to another friend who is an editor and had her edit it, and then brought it back to my sister and put all of the different versions together. And then, submitted it to my boss and was like, okay, it's ready. And she went, well, from a financial standpoint, you've already had it edited by 2 separate editors, one of whom already works for the press. It looks really clean. You're good. So that was unexpected because while I did go through the heartache of, ripping through my manuscript and making it bleed and retyping it multiple times in the agonizing process, I got to do it with my sister and one of my friends, so it wasn't nearly as threatening as I had imagined.
Oh yeah, right.
But that rough first draft is a far cry from even the 7th edit that I sent on, which is really different than the finished manuscript that went in. And then seeing how it changed in proofreading and then again in typesetting. My book has a lot of non-sequential flashback elements, and the typesetter did this beautiful job of setting it off and making that clear in that process, I went, oh, okay, well, we need to fix something. You've actually made this better. I need to go with that. So that was a part of it too, was trusting the beta readers and the editors and the proofreader and everybody to know that my book was in the best hands, which is really hard, especially when you're a
Right.
first time author.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
But so yeah, it was a lot of working on the manuscript, and then I had to come up with the cover and the cover wrap, which is again probably not normal for authors unless you're self-publishing, but because I work through the press, I get to be like, hey boss, I did my own cover, can you use this? And luckily she liked it.
Oh, so you created your own cover as
I
well.
did.
So what was the inspiration behind that cover?
It wound up honestly being the result of a Google image search. It's such an abstract story that I wanted to find a way to. I knew it couldn't be like a photorealistic cover, that it needed to be sort of more an illustrated style, but I wasn't sure how to convey it, and so one of the visual symbols, one of the thematic elements that I use in my story over and over again is the red thread of destiny, which in Asian cultures, especially Chinese and Japanese, is supposed to be an invisible cord that ties soulmates together in a thread. And so I started searching for this image, and I found an animated GIF that was really interesting and simplistic, and I liked it and went, okay, I like where this is going from here, and just started playing with that as a design element and building on it and adding and subtracting and taking away, and then finally I went, oh, that's it.
Yeah, that's crazy. Yeah, it's definitely the cover definitely catches your eye. Now that you tell me the meaning behind it is even more interesting now because you're.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, there's actually a lot of symbolism in the cover that tells you a lot about the story.
Mm. So why? And I ask these questions to, um, just get, like, obviously some listeners are going to be writers, but just to show them the thought process that of every detail. You know what I mean? From writing the story to even designing the cover, why it's related. Because you've seen work. I mean, you know what I mean? I'm sure
Mm-hmm.
that it's irrelevant. And then you're like, why is
Yes,
that?
yes. I'm always that reader that sits back and looks at the cover and is like, I don't understand. Why did you put her in a purple dress?
Right.
The book clearly says it was green.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, I didn't want that to happen in my cover.
Right. So yeah, so why is that important? Just why is that connection between everything in the story and everything that's displayed, whether it's illustrations inside, whether it's designs, simple as designs inside. I know some people get very creative with the formatting, you know what I mean, in
Mm-hmm.
terms of the headings. Why is all of that important to be connected and not just throwing anything on the cover inside the book?
I think human beings are visual creatures. And probably from an evolutionary standpoint, that makes sense. Like a lot of the food that we eat is really pretty, right? Um,
Mm-hmm.
and I think we're used to visuals giving us a clue, at least in our society, to what's going on. If you think about the way that the horror movie is filmed, or the way that a haunted house dresses their set, there are particular lighting cues and colors that are used to psychologically manipulate the viewer and put you in the frame of mind that they want you to be in. And whether or not we realize it, this is happening to us all the time with advertising and television and media all around us. So I think if you don't package your story to the level that we're used to seeing in our society, then it comes across as unprofessional, or in some cases even jarring.
Mm. So for you, um, what it because it's funny because you talked about the editing process and going through it and your reaction to your own work from the first draft to even your seventh pass and then getting it back. Um, there's a little sympathy that goes out to the writers who can't necessarily afford the type of editor they need, but even like you said, 7 passes, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Is a lot of work you can do. So uh why is that important, and what recommendation would you make to a writer who just is at a point where they think they can't afford it or they don't know what to do? What advice would you give them in terms of their first draft when they're looking at it?
I mean, I think that it's important because you want clarity. You want your reader to see, read, experience the best possible version of you and your story. And as an author, the first book that any reader picks up of yours is like a job interview or a first date. You don't want to go to your first date smelling like you just got off the line of work. You're going to take a shower first, right? Editing,
Hopefully.
right? We hope. We hope. Life advice: shower before your first date.
Right.
But same sort of thing with your book. You wanna clean it up a little bit first. You wanna make it presentable before your first date with the reader. You wanna romance them and impress them with why they should take you home with them. Uh,
Mm.
So,
if you feel like you can't afford it, think outside the box. There are other writers like you who are out there who have a book that they want to put out and they can't afford an editor either. So go onto Twitter, use the writing community hashtag and say, hey, are there any writers who are willing to swap stories with me? I'll read yours. You read mine. We give each other constructive feedback. Because if I had to pay for the editing of my story, my book would still be sitting on my computer. I promised my sister that I would edit her book, and I am doing a bartering deal with my second editor to where I'm going to do her website in exchange for the book. So legitimately think about skills that you have. And one of the easiest is if you're a writer, a reader, trade with other readers, swap with them. Say, hey, would you be willing to read my book? Give me some advice. I'll give you a shout out in the pages.
Mm.
Alternatively, there are services like Fiverr and other places in our gig economy where you can find editors that you can hire for reasonable rates. Just be careful.
Yeah, just be very careful with that. So website design too, huh?
Yeah.
You like do everything. How do you find time to do so many things?
I never finish anything.
So if you have a writer in front of you and they're confused about a website design, you based on your experience, what catches the eye from a website? What are must-haves on an author's website?
On an author's website, you need to have something about you that give us a sense of your personality, some sort of bio. And it doesn't have to be serious. Like I think in my author's bio for my website, I wrote that I'm the sort of author that hates talking about herself.
because it's honest and it's funny.
And it gives people a
Right.
sense of my personality. So, if you need to list like your Hogwarts house, your favorite Pokemon, and who you think the rightful king of the Seven Kingdoms is, do it. But put something of you so that people can get a feel of your personality. try to, as well as that something, if you write something, if you can do blogging, that's fantastic. And even if it's just silly little lists, like my 10 favorite books, my 5 favorite superheroes, what I like to eat for breakfast every day. The point is to give people a taste of your writing style and also reassure them that you are a real human and somebody that they want to get to know.
Mm, that's very good advice. So, point of view. Which one do you prefer to write in?
I always really preferred third person, but my book had to be told in the first person, so I switched
Mm,
over. And while I miss the ability to jump around and tell you what every character is thinking and feeling, so that you have like a godlike perspective of the world. I also really
right.
appreciate the sort of intimate emotional details that you can get in a first person narrative and really a sense for who a character is. So I think I've decided that it depends on the story. And I haven't yet read one that works in second person, but this is a challenge to all the writers out there listening. I want to read your amazing second person narrative because I think it can be done.
I didn't realize how many writers preferred first person over third. You know what I mean?
Really?
I don't know. Yeah, I'm looking at those writer groups
Mm-hmm.
online, and somebody poses that question. I'm like one of 3 people out of 50 that say third. Everybody says first.
I
I'm
guess
like, what
I would be one of those other 3 with you.
I'm like, what the hell? I'm like, what
Right?
the So, a quick question before we jump into your book.
Yeah.
Have you illustrated for anyone else outside of that one project?
Um, I have. I've done, you know, I've done some personal projects. Like I've illustrated some children's books for kids. Like they wrote the book and then I illustrated it for them, and then their parents got it and school got it bound, kind of thing. Um, I
Really?
Yeah, I've done logos for people, and I always wanted to do tattoos, but haven't gotten to do that yet.
Oh snap!
Well,
I'm thinking for children's books and tattoos.
what better compliment than somebody being like, I want your art on my
Right.
skin. Yes, I've made
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
it.
Exactly. So, what is life like as an illustrator? Because obviously, most of these people here, your life as a writer. What is life like as an illustrator? How do you know when, if you're doing the story justice, or when you do the story justice? How do you know as an illustrator?
I think I think you have to put on different hats, kind of just like you do as a writer. So you have on your illustrator hat, and then you have to step away from it, take off the illustrator hat, and put on the reader hat, and come back and look at the picture. And when you look at the picture with your reader hat on and go, I know what this page says without reading the words, you're done.
Mm.
And it doesn't have to be, I know everything this page says, but you should be able to look at it in a glance and have have an emotional connection to it, because that's one of the things that I've realized, having kids in my life and being the aunt that gets asked to read stories, is the stories that they ask me to read the most often are the ones where they know what I'm going to say because the picture goes really is showing.
Have you ever turned down a project?
Have I ever turned down a project? I have, actually. My uncle wanted me to do uh, princessy kind of Christian story. Like it was somewhere between one of those princess shows on the Disney Channel, and it's the Chronicles of Narnia. And it sounded like an interesting concept, but it just wasn't me. The style didn't fit me and the story didn't really fit me. And so I said, like, I love you and your family, but I think you deserve to have this done by someone who's passionate about it.
the butt.
So yeah, I turned down my uncle.
How was that reaction from you?
He was really nice about it. He was just kind of like, okay, well, just asking. Like, I don't, he might have been hurt.
Has he, right?
I hope not.
Sure
Sorry, Uncle Chris. I still love you.
Has he completed it since,
No.
Damn, that's messed up.
It is. I feel kind of bad.
Now logo design. What is that like? Getting someone having someone reach out to you about a logo design, because as we know, that's the representation of someone's brand. You know what I mean? That's I would think is a big honor. I did a logo before, but it wasn't like, I don't know. It wasn't like logo. So how was that?
It is a big honor. I when Nicole told me that she was gonna let me handle the rebranding of the press and do our new logo, I was just like, what? Like, I'm totally not crying right now. I'm really not. Kind of response. Because it is huge. But it's also something that I've had to learn to say yes to the right projects and no to the wrong ones, kind of thing. Like, I don't really want to design your logo for your shoe company because I'm not really into shoes. But, the logo for our press, or I was fortunate enough to get to do the logo for the North Carolina Foster and Adoptive Parent Association. And every time I see it, it makes me smile.
Wow.
It's about knowing yourself too, enough to say when to say no and when to say yes.
That's crazy. Because I don't know. It's just that I don't know. The nose, I don't know. As obviously, as someone, like you said, the fear of rejection. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And it's so hard
too. Be on the
side
of it,
especially when you're trying to pay the bills and you're trying to be like, well, no, I got to do this because it's going to pay the bills. But the thing that I discovered is that when if you're a designer and you're doing design work for things that you don't enjoy, then after a few years go by, you suddenly hate design. Like I stopped doing any sort of graphic design work for several years because I kept getting these corporate gigs. I mean, corporate-ish, not like big corporate, but people who had that sort of attitude. And I was miserable, and it made me hate it.
What got you back into it? What was that project that you decided to jump on that turned that around?
It was the kids' book, the foster and adoption illustration project. I hadn't wanted to do illustration or anything like that in a while, and I said, this I am willing to do because my heart was.
Good thing they came around. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So the laws of engagement. I mean, entanglement. I'm sorry. I don't know why I keep thinking the laws of engagement. The laws
it's
of
a romance story.
Yeah. Break down that story for people that don't know.
Okay. So on the it's a very layered thing. Kind of like a lasagna. Keep digging and digging. But on the surface story at its simplest level is about a young girl who's a medium, and she contacts this ghost that she thinks is going to train her in her spiritual power. Except that he falls in love with her at first sight. And if she's being honest with herself, she was in love with him too. The only way she could think to talk to him was to ask him to teach her. And so they embark on this relationship, and at some point in it, she realizes that it's really unhealthy for her and starts to question, like dating a dead guy, what kind of is this a really healthy plan? Is this a really healthy plan? Am I crazy? What is wrong with me? And after, well-meaning advice from others, decides he's not real. He's all in her head. She's entirely created him, and walks away and attempts to live her life in denial of this really deep-seated love she has for him, which doesn't work out well, because denying who you are never does. And so, she has to embark on this journey in her own psyche, and also in the spirit world, and a little bit in the physical world too, of what the heck is going on here? Was this real? Did I actually have a relationship with this person? Am I crazy? And if this was real, like, why? Why would the universe do this to me? What purpose does this serve? Why me?
So writing this type of story, when you're talking about someone with an attraction to a ghost, you know what I mean?
Right.
So, in writing, yeah, how do you get into that mindset, in the thought process of how? Because like you said, like you mentioned, it is first person. So how do you get yourself in that mood and that mindset to write for your character?
I guess I cheated. I made her a lot like me. I said, from a writing perspective, what would be the benefit, like, of being in a relationship with a ghost? Who would be the best possible person who, who would feel safer in a relationship with a ghost? They would need it to be a ghost instead of a living person. And I went, okay, this is a survivor of trauma. And so she needs to be in a relationship with a ghost because he can't hurt her. So I took a lot of, like, my trauma and background as a foster child and put that into her, because it made sense of, like, this would be a really interesting way to help her heal. And so that's how I got into that headspace. And I dug out some of my high school yearbooks and those poetry pieces and scraps of paper, like digging for who I was as a teenager, because the story starts off with her as a teenager, to try to get back into that, like, angst-filled space of, like, oh my God, I don't have a date for the prom. It's the end of the world.
Give me Maya's writing setup, because everybody has their own quirky way. Some people need music, some people need total silence. What is your writing setup?
My writing setup is usually late at night, when my niece has finally gone to sleep, and my sister is usually off somewhere writing, and I'm, like, curled up in my bed with my phone, like, seriously typing away with my thumb. in a dark room where no one can see me. But sometimes also, like, outside in a chair while the kids are jumping on the trampoline, screaming, or while I'm sitting somewhere waiting because something just sort of popped into my head and it won't let go. I am grateful for the advancement of cell phones, because I am that writer who will just whip out my phone and be like, oh my God, I know how the scene has to end, and just hold on, guys, and start typing.
So writing on a phone, you prefer to write on the phone? So even if you're home and not out, and you have access to pen and paper or the laptop, you'll write on the phone first?
I will, which is weird, but I think it's like a psychological trick kind of thing. Like my work life involves the computer at every level. So I think psychologically, when I sit down in front of the computer, my brain's like, "Oh, it's time for work."
Time for work.
And then writing notes on paper, old school, feels like I'm in class. Like, oh, it's time to pay attention, to do a research project. And I can write on paper, but because I always wrote all of my argumentative research essays on paper, when I try to write fiction on paper, it starts sounding like I'm writing a thesis, and then nobody can understand what the heck I'm saying without a dictionary. So the phone, though, I'm like, oh, it's just like this thing that's for fun, right? So no pressure. I'm over here playing, and honestly, it started because I was like, I waste way too much time looking at my screen time on all these stupid phone games. What can I do instead? And I was like, okay, life hack. Instead of playing the stupid phone game, you're going to open up an app and start writing. And then I wound up with a novel. So I guess that works for me.
Right. So what's the plan for the release?
The plan for the release is that I'm probably going to have like a smallish launch party locally with family and friends, and then have some signings at some local bookstores. And then at the end of February, I will be going to Mysticon in Roanoke, Virginia for a reading and a signing. And then I'll have I have 2 more convention appearances right now booked. Congregate in Winston-Salem, North Carolina, and Palm Carolina and Charlotte.
So what's the emotion you're feeling right now as we approach the release?
I am consistently reminding myself to breathe and not panic, and that it is okay. It's okay if everybody hates it. It's okay if they all laugh at me. What matters is that I did this and I showed up for myself. So panic. A lot of panic.
So, the launch party. You say you're gonna do a smaller.
Why? Yeah, probably.
Why not?
Yeah, just to get me comfortable. Yeah. And it's also, it's right around the corner. Like right now, as we're recording it, I'm less than 2 weeks out from the launch party.
Right. It literally is right around the corner.
Yeah, it is.
Now, your sister, your sister had released any projects as well, or is she working on her first one?
She is working on her first one. She's working on her first several. She just she's that history nerd who decided to write a historical novel for her first book and then realized that she had to do a lot more research. And so I might have accidentally thrown a plot bunny her way and convinced her that she should write a paranormal romance about a Nixie instead.
Right.
So hopefully she's working on that, and it'll be coming out from the press here in the next year. So
now, how is that? That's cool to have 2 writers that are right there. Especially being sisters, the competitive nature, the supportive nature. You know what I mean? You have everything together. You guys can motivate each other. How is that?
It is integral to me as a writer, because she's been reading over my stuff and editing it since we were teenagers. So I know that it's made me a better writer, and I have a respect for having a relationship with an editor improves your writing. It's definitely a blessing. The biggest problem we have is that between the 2 of us, we have way more ideas than we have time to write.
Yeah, I was like,
she'll look at me and say, no more plot bunnies. Stop that.
Right. Yeah, we gotta finish the ones we already
gotta
started.
finish the ones we started.
Do you ever see yourselves writing a book together?
Yes, we actually we have a plan. We even have like the background for the story. We're just working on our individual projects first. But there is a plan to write sort of a twist on the sort of the supernatural story, because it's always like a pair of brothers, and we're in watching these shows, we're always making the snarky comments about how they're doing it stupid and wrong. So we've decided that we want to tell the story from the female perspective of like all of the little life hacks that they would use to make monster catching easier, because we live in a time of technology and ridiculous planning, so why not use it to your benefit? So we have a sort of humorous monster hunter story.
So the laws of entanglement. Break down that title.
It's kind of a play on a combination of the laws of attraction and quantum entanglement. So in the new age self-help community, there's this concept of the laws of attraction, which is this idea that if you're clear about what you want and have sort of done the work to make sure that the universe can give it to you and put it out there, you can manifest anything you want if you're clear enough. And then quantum entanglement is the concept that one particle that splits into two particles, no matter how far apart they are always connected in space and time and share similar qualities. And so I combine those two together because both of those inform the story in this journey of the two of them being connected. And it's also a quantum physics meets new age thought kind of idea of what if soulmates are literally nothing more than the particle that we split off from during the Big Bang? What if physics could explain love, and vice versa? What if love is the gravitational force between two particles?
So tell us why it's important for us to go out and get this novel and dive into it.
Well, I think at our heart we all want to be loved, but ultimately we're all scared to be ourselves. And the challenge arises when we go out into the world and try to get into relationships pretending to be someone we're not. Then those relationships always end horribly because we've been lying. So this book is really about the journey of learning to love yourself and accept yourself, and how that makes you a better person and is required for a healthy romantic relationship.
So now we are going to jump into a segment of the podcast, which is called a lightning round, which everyone calls a lightning round. But I'm gonna ask you. I'm gonna give you two things. You got to give me one answer. And hold on, let me set my timer at 30 seconds, which we always go over, but whatever. For real, I don't know. We always go over 30 seconds. 30 seconds is really not that long to be answering questions. So you just let me know when you're ready.
Okay, so you're going to give me two things, and I'm supposed to what now?
Pick one.
Pick one. Okay. All right, I'm ready.
Yep. All right. Windows or Mac?
Windows.
iPhone or Android?
iPhone.
Instagram or Twitter?
Ooh. Instagram.
Physical books or ebooks?
Physical books. They smell better.
Texting or talking?
Texting.
Tea or coffee?
Oh, God. Coffee? Yes, have some.
Laptop or laptop or desktop?
Ooh. Am I gaming? Laptop.
Standalones or sequels?
Sequels.
Data Ghost or Data Monster?
Ghost.
That was a minute. I just thought about, I'm like, the monster. I wonder what that would be like. I don't know. There's a lot you can.
That
gotta
could be
think about
broadly
dating the monster.
interpreted. Yeah.
Yeah, like, is it like a Monster Inc. monster that's like misunderstood, or is it like a monster that's like evil, and then you like, then you're tagging along with that nonsense,
Right. Or they really evil, or is it a matter of perception? This is like a Grendel story where like you think they're a monster, but they're really like the sweetest person ever.
right? Oh yeah, or
Ooh.
one of those heroic villains nowadays that they keep coming up with.
Oh, yeah.
I'm like, how's everybody creating these villains? They're like doing, well, I guess in their mind, you know what I mean?
The hero of their own story villains.
Yeah, exactly. And you can relate. And then if there are a group of people out there that will consider them heroes for what they're doing.
Yeah, you're like, I'm trying to hate you. Stop it. I really want to hate them.
Right.
Like Cersei Lannister. Damn it. I really want to hate her.
So drop all your handles, your website, all the information, how people can contact you, how can they check out your book, all that type of stuff.
All right. So I'm pretty easy to find. I'm Maya Preisler pretty much everywhere. Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. You can find me at mayapreisler.com. If you want to look at my art, you can find me at mayarenee.com. Yeah. Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube. There's not much on YouTube, but my book trailer's there. You can go watch it. I think it's pretty cool.
And the book drops.
It drops Sunday, February 2nd.
February 2nd. All right, Maya, we appreciate you dropping for jumping by here on the Fiction Addiction podcast. Definitely appreciate all the gems you dropped for all the listeners, and pretty sure there's a bunch of writers that are going to be out there that are going to appreciate everything, all the tips you gave in this interview. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you, Chris. I had a blast.
Thank you for joining us on the Fiction Addiction Podcast. Make sure you visit fictionaddictionpodcast.com for links on everything we talked about today, as well as awesome resources, additional tips, and Fiction Addiction merchandise.